Hello, Nasdaq followers, and welcome to another episode of Trade Talks. I'm your host, Lyanne Alfaro, coming to you live from Times Square, New York City. Today, joining me is CEO and founder of Larrea Wealth Management, Aquiles Larrea. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate being here.
And appreciate having you here. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is timeless, unfortunately. Student debt and challenges as students try to graduate and then afterwards having to pay them. We are very familiar with this number, the 1.6 trillion, the whopping number in debt that we have right here in the U.S. in student loan debt.
Yeah, it's an intimidating number to say the least, and there are a lot of reasons for that. This wasn't an intention to be this for students, and I can remember back when I was a student and I was paying for my own college that I saw a lot of friends who went into debt, and that debt went with them for another 10, 20 years. Even when they had families and the like, they were still paying that off. And now what we're seeing now in the market is that they are actually elongating that debt even more. So there are a couple of strategies that once you're out of school that we need to address. But even before we get there, you and I were talking about how maybe they should have some sort of class or course to teach people about the debt before they even go into it.
Right. So, I mean, one of the issues that we're seeing in particular with the generation of undergraduates today is that even before they finish school, they're having trouble getting through with payments. And in part, it's just perhaps not even being able to make the payment or not understanding the loan. So there's this interesting stat that while Latino enrollment has increased in schools, a lot are struggling to even reach the graduation mark. And I think that this expands beyond the Latino community and to communities overall. So what are some ways that perhaps we could enforce the education as undergraduates are still in the system?
Yeah, I think one of the great ways would be first, like I said before, you want to understand the debt before you get into it. As you're going through the debt, if there's a possibility with a side job or side thing that you're doing, to actually pay some of that debt down as you're going through, and that when you come out, maybe as a reward, they should have a lower interest rate for you. That would be an interesting idea. Or at the same time, when you're coming right out, that it's not this big albatross on your back, that it is something where you understand I have an obligation to a borrower, but maybe I could look at other alternative borrowers and transfer my debt to those borrowers. So that's something that could be interesting, and it actually could be a game changer in the way that students are handling loan debt right now, and it not being such a force to be reckoned with upon graduation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's break down this number. Where are we seeing most of the burden when it comes to this immense debt?
Well, I mean, the burden comes immediately after, where, you know, they've accumulated close to six-figure debt, you know, especially if you go to an Ivy League school, you know, you're looking at $100,000 to $300,000 or $400,000 worth of debt. The first thing you have to examine is, what is my strategy to get this debt paid off in a reasonable amount of time, not when my youngest kid is getting out of college himself, you know, or herself. So you want to make sure that your strategies are aligned with your style of living. But, you know, some people are going longer in the debt world. So say, for argument's sake, it was 20 years. All of a sudden they go 30 years. And yeah, it's more affordable, but maybe not the right way to go at this particular point. Maybe you need to be a little bit more aggressive, but you, once again, you have to do what's realistic. You know, and so you have a growing family and the like, that could be a severe challenge.
And how are people addressing it? I mean, the student debt is the heftiest of household debt, which is crazy to think that even, as you said, even after you graduate, out of all of the other debt that you could accumulate, that this continues to be the most pressing one. How are people kind of managing that currently?
You know, it's funny, it's next to home debt, it's the next biggest debt. And it's crazy to me that you didn't grow up in America thinking that I want to have a debt. You know, I want to have a school debt. You know, you didn't grow up thinking that. You grew up thinking, I want to have a home, I want to have a family, I want to have all these things. So the American dream has gone on the wayside because of something like that. You have to go back to basics and educate yourself financially, whether it be with a financial advisor, with your professor at school. There are plenty of people you can reach out who can act as quasi-mentors to you in how can you attack this debt and make your life more manageable financially and otherwise. And I think that's pretty important.
Absolutely. And now thinking about the students, the future undergraduate students that haven't even gotten to this higher education system where they have to tackle on debt, and in particular student loan debt. You addressed this earlier. What are some of the potential solutions that could be provided to them so that they don't have this immense kind of burden on their back having just graduated?
Absolutely. You know, once again, we didn't intend for loans to be such a big burden to students. You know, students, we wanted them to have the American dream. And the American dream was, I'm going to have a house, family, as I mentioned before. But how can you go about doing it? Being super strategic so you're in your junior year, for argument's sake, your third year of college, and you say to yourself, how am I going to step by step attack this? The first thing is to examine how much debt that you have outstanding, right? You got to begin somewhere, and don't get intimidated by it. Think of it as, I am going to attack this piece by piece, and talk to the lender. Ask them, well, if I paid off X amount, can I get a break on, you know, similar to your credit card companies. You know, there might be some flexibility there. However, I can't speak for them, so I don't know. But the second part would be the moment you're out of school, to be the same way that you would save towards a goal like a vacation or something else. You know, you might put 10% of, or Christmas fund, you know how they used to put away.
Exactly, having a separate fund.
Exactly. So you know that I'm going to put 10% of my pay away first. And then of that 10%, I'm going to send that check out to the loan companies. But at the same time, we're going to look at, you know, companies like SoFi or other companies out there who provide alternative lower financing. And if it makes sense, given the length of the loan that you think you'll be doing, then that's a viable alternative, because the amortization over a long period of time can be thousands of dollars. And if you can save that, why wouldn't you? You know, that's the smart. The only other thing is, you know, as many millennials and the like are doing now, is you have side hustles where you know, let's just say you don't need that money per se, and you're sopping it away in the bank right now. Once a quarter, send the check out to the lender and break down that debt even further. You know, I think, you know, over time, this ain't gonna happen in a year. We know that, you know. But over time, it's gonna be a very interesting way to start making that bite versus taking other steps to put yourself in more debt. You know, that's the last thing you want to do, in my opinion. But that's something that could, bit by bit, start making a difference. And once you start seeing how it can make a difference, because you don't see it one day, but over time, when you start seeing it and the like, it can be very interesting how that can bring down your debt, and you have a better quality of life, and then you can really chase the American dream. Absolutely. As it was intended. Yeah,
a very targeted way to take a look at the debt and making sure that the loan is paid off. Thank you so much, Aquiles, for joining us and sharing a little bit of your intel. Nasdaq followers, please stay tuned for more coverage coming to you right here from Trade Talks. Until then, we are signing off right here from the Nasdaq Market Site.